Great. Welcome, everyone. My name is Norman Sequeira. I lead a team of cloud solution architects and engineers who are focused on helping our customers architect great solutions in Azure. Extremely sorry about the delay. We're still having a few challenges getting people in on the call, so sorry about that. So in today's session, we will talk about architecting and developing microservices apps using cloud native tools. We have some great panelists across customers who build great solutions on Azure and let's say our Microsoft MVP community, who's actually who've done a great job in evangelizing Microsoft solutions across to developers and architects and basically help understand the world of Azure a lot more better. So we'll go around the virtual table while we're waiting for the rest of the panelists to join in. So we'll first go over to Vishal Madan from Imoka. Vishal, over to you if you can talk about yourself.
Thanks, Norman. So guys, I'm Vishal Madan. I'm the head of engineering at Imoka. So Imoka is a world leader in digital skills assessment for global enterprises. I'm sure you have heard about Imoka. So just speaking briefly about me, after 17 years of various functions and roles with a company called as Amdocs, which is again a world leader in telecommunication billing. I did a small entrepreneurship stint in recruitment business. And then with this IT leadership in Amdocs and with this recruitment business experience, I jumped into the world of HR tech, SaaS and cloud with Imoka in Jan 2020. Yeah, I'm kind of new to cloud, I would say, starting with Jan 2020. But thanks to my team at Imoka and thanks to the Microsoft Azure, I mean, the onboarding, I would say, was very simple. So that's it about me, guys. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Vishal, for that. Next, we'll go to Swaminathan Vetri, who's our MVP and who's been doing a great job talking about microservices, containers, service meshes. Over to you, Swami.
Hey, hello, everybody. Good morning. Hey, guys, I hope you're able to hear me.
Yep, Swami, you're on.
All right. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Sorry about the technical glitches that always happens in the live events, right? So yeah, my name is Swami. You can call me a Swami. So I work as a solution architect at Maersk Technology Center in Bangalore. I'm currently working on building cloud native applications on Azure. I'm part of some of the modernization initiatives within Maersk, where we are moving from monolith to microservices and on-prem to cloud migration and things like that. So we use Azure a lot. So all of our workloads on the cloud are running on AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, and we do use all the Azure PaaS services as the backend, things like that. Right. And I've been part of the communities close to a decade now. From 2012 is when my community engagement started. And from 2016, I've been actively leading a couple of user groups in Bangalore. So that's why I'm also a part of the MVP community. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk about service mesh and cloud native apps and things like that. So yeah, looking forward to have more interactive question and answers in this session.
Hey, thanks, Swami. So for our first question, we'll go over to Vishal. Vishal, you have a very interesting solution that's actually built on Azure, something that actually helps connect interviewers and candidates and actually offer a live coding platform. I think one of the interesting aspects of the solution is the entire solution was built around on Azure PaaS services. So how is it that Azure PaaS services have helped you from an onboarding, time to market perspective and on the scalability front? Would love to hear as to how you architected your solution around these pillars.
So Norman, thanks for the question. This is one of my favorite questions and I can go on and on this. But let me be brief because I know we have only another 20 minutes or so. So guys, let's understand the history of Imoka. We started as a bootstrap startup. Couple of engineers that started working on the product back in 2015 or so. Right, again, being bootstrapped, I mean, the engineers that were part of this product team, for example, did not have any prior experience in cloud. Right, and we wanted to focus on back then we wanted to focus on the MVP, the features and everything to get the product market fit as soon as possible, and not to get into the nuances of deployment and capacity and sizing and everything, right? And that is where PaaS helped us, right? Because the people could start directly with the easy deployment from PaaS, with the easy installation. We did not have CI/CD pipelines back then. So let me go to some specific PaaS services that we use, right? So let's start with the app service, for example. So with the app service, we did not have to think about the IaaS deployment, installation, and everything, right? We just directly could deploy the code on the app service, and yeah, we are live kind of thing. Though we did not have the CI/CD pipelines back then, for example, the deployment slots, which is one of the key feature of the app services, helps to directly release from QA or staging to production, right? So that made life easy. Again, if we had gone to virtual machines, for example, which is IaaS, right, we would have to get into sizing because there are different options, D2 and D3 and D4 and everything, right? But with the app service, we had limited sizing options. The perfect one for us back then was the development configuration kind of thing, right? So we selected that. And once we moved into the market fit and we started onboarding clients, that is where we moved to the basic production configuration. And of course, after so many years and with the top IT services companies as part of a clientele, of course, we cannot go to the remain with the basic configuration. So we have now moved to the top-notch configuration. Along with that, we have the CI/CD pipelines also. Now going to the other PaaS services, for example, let's say Azure managed SQL instance, for example, right? In that case, also, we never had a DBA onboarded in Imoka. So until date, we do not have a DBA onboarded because with the managed instance of SQL, just some basic configuration from our side. I mean, the whole load and the replication, the backup and everything is taken care of by Azure, right? So that helps us. We don't have to have a DB expertise over there. Now we're moving to cognitive services, which I'm still confused whether I should call it SaaS or I should call it PaaS, right? But given the context of this particular question, I think cognitive services cannot be dropped, right? Now we are heavily using Face API, we are heavily using speech services and text analytics. And if we were waiting for our own models to be built up and everything, we would never have our proctoring suite live, for example, or we would never have a one of the top selling products in our particular feature suite live, right? So thanks to cognitive services. Then, of course, being into coding assessments and everything, one of the most important events that happen for our clients is the campus drives, right? And campus drive, there are 1,000 to 2,000, sometimes 5,000 candidates join the coding assessments at the same time. So we have to make sure that the platform does not die during that particular point of time or stagger during that particular point of time. So that's the reason we have Azure Kubernetes services with ACI and SCR integrated. And one more unique thing is that because we had some unique auto scaling needs, we had to go for CADA. So thanks to CADA. So with CADA, ACR, ACI, and AKS, we don't have to worry about campus drives. I mean, we even do not know that the campus drives are happening. Earlier, prior to Azure Kubernetes services, the CS team had to give us a heads up saying that, look, there is a campus drive happening, do something about it. And then we manually went to the infrastructure, scaled it up for the time being. And then once the campus drive was done, we scaled down the infrastructure again. But with the AKS and with CADA, I don't think we have to do it anymore. So Norman, as I said, I can go on and on, but given the time, I think that's good enough of a benefit illustration, I would say.
Hey, Vishal, thanks, Arun, for that. It was excellent hearing as to how PaaS services have actually taken away the worry of actually planning for an event in advance, right? I think it's awesome to actually get that perspective. So we have a couple more panelists from the MVP community who joined in. So we'll go to Karthikeyan. So Karthikeyan, you've done, let's say, multiple community sessions on microservices, and very often microservices containers are spoken about in the same breath, right? So what factors should customers consider while building microservices, and what are the possible deployment options for containers on Azure for hosting microservices?
Yeah, first, when you think of microservices, you should be thinking in terms of different mindset. The mindset is basically thinking in terms of small services that has a polyglot, and the culture also should be changed. Meaning you should be able to have multiple teams who can work on multiple services with different technologies. If you're not thinking in terms of that, you're just thinking in terms of either C# or Python or only one technology, it is not the way to think. So you actually think in terms of solving that problem with that technology and that tools. And so that's the first mindset you should get into. That's the first mindset. The second is to containerize. So containerize any services you have, make sure that you have it's properly containerized, and then you get that into the system. And okay, so now the microservices is like the I told you the mindset. The next is we want to move to the cloud, right, or cloud. The main point is I have traveled from on-premises to the actual cloud. So we used to have a VMs, and then right now it's Kubernetes. What is the main difference is, okay, it was VMs and we had the whole power of deploying anything you want. You get one VM and then you create multiple IA services and then you deploy multiple systems. But when it comes to Azure, what happens is you need to create resources for each and every services. So what people thought is, okay, let's move to Kubernetes. So what I am trying to tell you now is, please don't do that. Okay, containerization is fine. It's actually perfectly fine. Make sure that you think through your plan where you really need a Kubernetes, meaning you have hundreds of services, then you think for Kubernetes. Otherwise, just stay with your web apps, Azure Functions, or any other ACI, all other options that is other than Kubernetes, because it takes at least a month to get your hands on better and get it going, and then it takes at least 6 months for you to get that into production mode, and then every developer's understanding, your operation team understanding, your support team understanding. It takes a little longer than you actually expect, because it is not an easy thing to implement and then get your thing running. Because Kubernetes is basically has too many bells and whistles. You need lots of things like basics of computer science, starting from network to how you actually your hard disk works, right? So that's the first thing. I'll just give you an example with the time limit. What we did was we had a huge ML workload that needs to run. So we used Kubernetes for KDA. First, we tried in Azure Functions, but Azure Functions has its own limit of expanding only till 200 functions per instance, and then it stops after that. But we had like 6.5 crores or 7 crores of records. We need to do an OCR and then do some prediction on that. So what we did was, then we moved to Kubernetes. We wrote an L chart for that. We can specify how much CPU it can take, how much memory it can take for each and every different variable workloads, and then deploy that. Then the cost was then we thought, okay, let's go back to VM. But what the problem is, when we calculated the cost with respect to VM, it was coming around 25 lakhs. So what we did is we started using KDA, and then for different workloads, and then cost came down to around, I think, 3.5-4 lakhs. So it was a huge saving. Even that 1 lakh is basically the cost of the app insights. Suddenly, we get largely billed for the logs that is written by the Kubernetes. So that's the major thing. So we have to think through all that when you are moving from containers. So I would say stick with your containerization. So do containerization for your apps. Make sure you always do a containerization, and then move it to maybe a web app. And then if it needs more scaling, move to Azure Functions. Then think through ACI. There is Azure instances is there. You can think through that. Then move to AKS. Do not jump into AKS because it's too fancy. You will get your hands burnt, your developer frustrated and scolding at you. Web app is far better. Why are you choosing this? So make sure that you get into that stage and then take it from there, because it's too complex. They have Istio, you have multiple. But once you get into that and you have proper dashboards built in, observability properly built in, you have Istio set up, and then you can actually get a chart out of all your microservices exist. So those are all too good if it is more than 100 microservices. If it's not the case, stick with your containerization, move slowly. So that's the one of my amateur experience that I got from using all the containerization apps.
Hey, thanks, Aaron, Karthik, for sharing that perspective on as to how customers can actually plan their journey in the containerization process. Right? It does not necessarily have to start with AKS on day one. Yeah, thanks for sharing that perspective. Next, we'll go to Swami. Swami, you've been talking to the community a lot about, let's say, a service mesh and its relevance in microservice deployments. What is it that service meshes really get to the table, right, for container deployments? Do we really need it? And what are the options available?
Yeah, that's a great question, Norman. And as many times we read the session, we keep getting the same questions, right? Or similar questions on where do we need to go to service mesh? That's the first thing we need to understand. Like Karthik mentioned, service mesh is something which is on top of Kubernetes ecosystem, right? So the first thing is you need to understand what kind of containerized model you're using. Okay, now you put on Kubernetes, right? Now where the service mesh is going to help is, first thing is you need to have multiple microservices, right? So let's say when I say multiple, like hundreds and thousands of microservices, and if you're looking at having a common pane of glass of observability, or if you want to enable and secured way of communication, like if you want to introduce a zero trust model in your application architecture or so, right? That is when the concept like service mesh would help, right? And also like Karthik touched upon, if you're using a polyglot kind of a model in your microservice architecture, where one of your microservices could be on .NET, something could be in Java, and something could be in Python, etc., right? And if you want to get in the telemetry data of all of these things, right, then it would be difficult for the individual app teams to go and write and emit things in different programming languages, right? So what if you can build some layer on top of all of your ecosystem, and that is able to do all this, right? That is when you can use something like a service mesh. Right. So like I said, the point I'm trying to stress is it's not a silver bullet for sure, right? You need to understand how many microservices you have, what are the problems you're trying to address. And if you see yes, you really have these problems, and if you want to get them addressed, then yes, you can go with service mesh. And there are also n number of service meshes available. So we also need to look at what kind of mesh we want to use. Is it only within for the Kubernetes workload, or it is across Kubernetes and your on-prem and things like that, right? There are also certain meshes which you can help, which can use to across your hybrid network. Basically, you have some workloads running on Kubernetes, some on Azure, and some on VM and things like that. You can also use mesh to control all of these things, right? So service mesh is more on the infra heavy side of it. But I would like to take a little deviation from there and talk about something called Dapper, which is more of developer centric. And it also ties well with an Azure Container Apps, which just went live yesterday in the build, right? There's also option called Azure Container Apps, where you don't have to worry about Kubernetes and other things. If you have an Docker image available somewhere, Azure Container App is going to take care of your scaling and other things using KDA or even HTTP backends, right? In that model, if you want to still enable MTLS, which is mutual TLS, or enabling your observability, etc., you can use something called Dapper, which is more like a building block. There are multiple building blocks within Dapper, so you can use that, and then you can still build your applications, right? So there are n number of options when we go into cloud native tools. So service mesh, like I said, it's for large scale microservices, and if you want to handle all of them with a common, like I said, and single observability platform and things like that. Or if you're looking more of a developer centric things, you can also use something called Dapper, and then deploy your containerized workloads into Azure Container Apps, etc. Right? It's a little bit of an how to say tricky topic as well. The service mesh itself needs a good amount of time to walk through on different various aspects of it. But I hope I was able to clarify at a high level on when to use service mesh and when not to use, and what are the other options we have on Azure if not you want to go with service mesh. Yeah.
Hey. Great. I think thanks, Swami, for clarifying that. Yes, I mean, a great strategy in terms of using service mesh as well as Dapper. I think developers and architects have the options of using both together. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting for folks to actually check out one of the articles on the Dapper website on the same. So next we have Augustine. Augustine is one of our MVPs who's actually written some great blog posts out on well-architected cloud applications. So Augustine, how does one go about applying the operational excellence pillar to containerized applications on Azure? And great t-shirt, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't contain myself. Very interesting. Yeah. So thanks for the shout out to the blog. The well-architected framework and the team have been adding quite a few workloads to the WAF framework, and it's been great working with them. Now, the natural state for any app is not to work, right? It's to fail. Operational excellence is like the process of operations. We try to make sure that they are running on a long-term basis and a sustainable basis. Now, if you look at what operational excellence means, the first thing we need to get to is reliable engineering done. Your release engineering has to be the inner feedback loop, which Satya touched upon in Skidoo, the developer flow, like GitHub code spaces, GitHub Copilot, and has also Swami mentioned the Azure Container Apps, which I got GA, right? So basically, you're relying on the power of AKS without wrestling with the complexity of AKS. So that's a good part of it. Now, once you've got the release engineering dev part, obviously you got to get CI. That's where your GitHub actions help you, and the other things are there with it too. So if you look at it, after you have deployed the app, your deployment, your metrics are on that, what are you going to do? You got to make sure that you have rollback, or you got to rehearse failures too, because that's the fact of life. You got to work with it, embrace it, and try to overcome them. And now once you deploy your app, you got to monitor, because unlike monolith services, microservices are like probable needle in the cloud haystack. So even if you go somewhere wrong, I mean, 99 of your users are having great time on your app, that one user may be experiencing an issue. So I'm going to pinpoint that. You got to make sure your monitoring is really good. And this is also a throwback to how your maturity model is. It's not how you measure it, it's also what you measure. And this is where application insights to instrument your app as well as your monitor. They're doing your full stack monitoring, not just of your application, but also of the infrastructure issue. Now just wrap this up, I would like to say, point out to what Scott just said a day before build. Scott Guthrie. There are a lot of Scots in Microsoft. So if you let your cloud developers, right, lose on the cloud, and you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, Azure policy is your friend. Because with Azure policy, you'll have all the operational excellence best practices applied to your cloud assets. And that's how it should be. I mean, this is where the operation excellence, how to keep your app running and going on.
Hey, thanks, Augustine. Yeah, I think really great insights into as to how folks should be using Azure Monitor for containers, application insights, and doing an end-to-end tracking of the application, right? I think that leads into the point that Karthik was talking about integrating app insights into any microservices-based deployment. Yeah, I think great perspectives on that. Folks, I realize, yeah, we've gone past our session time. So we had another panelist today from AMGB who could not join in, but they had an interesting solution built on, let's say, an AI-based platform, but built using microservices. And they had done a virtual machine scaling, VMSS-based deployment model as to where you could actually use different SKU types to actually optimize for cost, which is also one of the key factors when you're looking at architecting solutions for the cloud. So thanks again to all the panelists for sharing insights. So just to wrap things up, some of the new build announcements that actually lead into what everybody spoke about today, right? I think the fact that the Azure Container Apps actually GA'd yesterday. So now the plethora of options available on Azure in terms of deploying containers has increased significantly. Some of the other things that Vishal also spoke about in terms of actually leveraging KDA, the KDA AKS add-on has now gone GA. So you actually have that available directly as an add-on in Kubernetes now. And a few more things in terms of previews around web application routing add-on for AKS. The whole idea is if you're deploying a web app now on Kubernetes, it's very easy to now get a managed ingress controller in place and do the routing for your web application too. So some great announcements which will actually add value to all the insights that everyone on this panel shared. So thanks a ton to everyone for sharing insights. I'm sorry about the delay, but yeah, some glitches do happen in this world. Thanks a ton, and thanks a ton to all the attendees who joined in. I hope you found this session useful.